The other day, someone asked me how to prepare for hills, right? If you have an upcoming race and it's a pretty hilly terrain, right? Maybe you're an ultra runner, maybe you're just running a tough course, right? A tough road course, and you need to prepare for the demands of the race, but you live in a place that's pretty flat, right? Extremely common out here in the Midwest, here in Milwaukee, right? Very flat, fortunately from the lakefront. Up the bluff, there are some hills which you can do repeats and things on, but a lot of people don't have access to hills in their local area. So when that's the case, what I like to do is add the right type of strength training exercises into the program. There are 3 things in particular from a strength standpoint that can be very beneficial, and then what I'll also do is show you a couple power exercises. From a strength standpoint, we're really looking to develop what we call triple extension. So extension of the hip, extension of the knee, and then plantar flexion of the ankle. That's going to give you that force and that power to propel up the hill. So muscles like your glutes, your hamstrings, your quads, and your calf and soleus, right? Those are going to be the big muscles that we really want to emphasize within our strength training program. Instead of doing lightweight for high repetitions, right? That's good from an endurance standpoint. I think it's actually beneficial in this case to work on low repetitions with a nice heavy loaded movement. From a power standpoint, as we grow to really explode and push up those hills, we're trying to propel our body weight up in incline. So we need that power and that explosiveness to really drive up there. So really work on low repetitions, anywhere from, I would say, 4 to 8 repetitions, and try to load that weight up as heavy as possible. So the 3 exercises I want to show you today, first one's the step up, second one's the hip thrust, and the third one will be a simple calf raise. I'll show you in a different segment here in a second, a couple very good power exercises, which will help put those heavy loaded strength training exercises and nice explosive action so you can get that kick up the hill. First one here, step up, one of my favorite all-around exercises. And if you have a step, always recommend something that's not overly high so that knee is below the hip. Don't really go to too much of a high box step-up position, especially when you look at running, right? There's not a whole lot of range of motion happening there, particularly at the hip and up hills. So if we keep that fairly low, we should be good. So for me, I'm just going to hold the kettlebell here. So what I have access to in the goblet position, lean forward over that front leg, drive, straighten everything. So this is getting that knee extension, hip extension. Only thing this is missing is that motion of the calf, that push off, that little kick from the calf and the ankle, which would be the last piece, but obviously we're going to train that in a second. So that's our first exercise, is the step up. Like I said before, heavier resistance, low repetitions, really load that up to be challenging. Still want to promote good balance and stability, but I think a nice heavy weight would be beneficial. Second one is going to be the hip thrust. So hip thrust is one I think not a lot of runners are doing enough of. Hip thrust is a very simple exercise. We can do this with the barbell. We can put a heavy dumbbell, kettlebell across the hips. We could also use the Smith machine at the gym, right? If you go to Planet Fitness or some of these other gyms, you have that barbell that slides up and down the rack. It's fixed. That is also pretty beneficial to perform the hip thrust. So with the hip thrust, I'm going to probably put some plates on here first, because that just sets the bar up in a position where it can easily slide over my thighs and get into position. If we use smaller weights, still beneficial. We have the load of those weights, but it's going to be a lot lower, so I kind of have to inch it over. So depending on how heavy the weight is, it could or could not work for you. If I slide this bar up all the way across here, the front of the hips, right into the muscles of the upper thigh, quads, hip flexors, I'm going to support my mid-back somewhere, like for a woman, right? If you think right about brow line, right where that strap is, straight across, just below shoulder blade area, that's a good place to position my back on the bench. And then from here, I could just simply kind of get set up first, right? I'm going to lift my hips up in the air, get into more of a low hip bridge or hip lift position, drive up into the hip thrust, and then lower down. This is working on that hip action, that hip extension, loading it to a greater degree, because we can add quite a bit of weight on here. Obviously, this right now is not heavy. It's only 65 pounds, but we can load this up usually hundreds of pounds. I have some women right now in particular that are kind of in the 2 to 3, 350 range in terms of weight. Surprising how much weight you can lift in this position. I always want to try to keep looking down, right? I'm going to look towards the bar, tuck my chin down as I come up, as opposed to come up here. This has a tendency to overextend the back. This keeps you in a nice neutral position that we can then drive up, engage from the glutes and hamstrings, hold for a few seconds, and then come back down. Okay, so that's the hip thrust. Just like I said before, low repetitions, 4 to 8 probably, and then trying to really add some good weight to the bar. Last one, right, that's our first and second, step up and hip thrust. Third one's going to be a calf raise. So just to make sure you can see, slide this back a little bit. With the calf raise, we're going to show you on this one just a nice straight leg calf raise. We can do this bent leg as well to get that deeper soleus muscle, but that's our third thing, right? As we push off and we drive up the hill, hip extension, knee extension, calf and ankle plantar flexion. So as I'm forward here, I'm just leaning against the squat rack. You can put your hands on the wall if you want. Raise and lower. Raise and lower. Hard thing about this exercise is it's not that challenging, right? I'm only pushing my body weight, pushing up the hill, up an incline, a little bit more challenging than solely body weight because of the position, the direction I'm going. So if you can add some type of resistance, put a weight vest on, put the barbell on, and go into a squat rack, do heavier calf raise, that could be beneficial. But that is the third strength exercise, is the calf raise, because we're getting that ankle plantar flexion motion. In the next half of this video, we're going to go after and talk about a couple specific power exercises to teach you how to quickly explode up the hills with these plyometric drills. Stay tuned. Now, as we talk about plyometrics to improve and hill running or to prepare for some type of hilly race, two in particular come to mind. It's the bound and the single leg bound. One thing to realize is you really need to understand and be conscious of your injury history before you start going towards plyometrics. Any type of recent tendonitis or tendinopathy, any joint issues that your joints don't tolerate this really kind of explosive and more again, higher degrees of loading as you land and strike down. This may not be the best for you, but if you think movement is pretty clean, not a lot of injuries, injury history, those kinds of things that would kind of warrant you being cautious here, these could be two very good movements to consider. So first one, and going back to kind of what we're looking for extension, hip, knee, and then plantar flexion. So we're moving horizontally or technically up a slight incline as we're on the hill. This works on kind of exploding horizontally in that. First one obviously is a double leg movement. That's why I feel like I really want to show the single leg one in a second, but I think this is a very good starting point where I would say 90% of people should land, should complete this one. The other 10% who do the bound very well, that have good stability, good power, should then move on to the single leg bound, but there's not a lot of people that I put in that category just because it's such a challenging exercise in multiple ways. It becomes really tough for a lot of people. So with the bound, hip hinge focus, flexing into the hips because I want to extend my hip, my knee, and then push out from the ankle to propel me forward as far as possible. Soft landing, okay? So pushing and landing on 2 feet, hinge through the hips, arms back. You see as I go to push off, I'm going to use my arms to carry momentum forward, help me land in a good position. Okay, so that's the bound. Goal ideally is if we could measure distance to see how far am I jumping over time, trying to progress that 1 inch further, 2 inches further, 3 inches further, try to get more explosiveness and power. The longer we jump, the more power we're actually demonstrating with that jump. From a single leg standpoint, single leg bounds, and now getting more specific to running because it's truly single leg, but a very hard exercise. Like I said, I don't give to a lot of people, but I want to give that option to you guys here. So as we go off one leg, it's a single leg, pushing me horizontally, and then also landing on that single leg. Okay? Harder to land, harder to balance. I'm going to try my left side here. Let's see. It's not as explosive. I'm trying to get that hip in triple extension, hip extension, knee extension, ankle plantar flexion to propel me forward. But then obviously as I come down, I need to land and stabilize. That's where a lot of people have trouble. They can push off and create some explosiveness as they go. A lot of people can't stabilize and control the landing. So overall, there are some examples of things you can do. If you don't have access to hills, I think strength training could be good. Speed work is another piece. Work on just running faster paces, running strides, running things that are going to create muscle and tendon power and explosiveness. But strength training is a good piece to really add some more load, right? If we're trying to power up a hill, we need to do low repetition, heavyweight strength training, step ups, hip thrusts, calf raises, and some type of plyometric exercise that could really be the icing on the cake. Questions about hill training, preparing for any upcoming races, feel free to reach out. I hope you enjoyed the video and have a great day.